This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. Today's discussion is Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, and more. So Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch have been really in the headlines recently with Bud Light running a marketing campaign around a transgender sort of, internet star, this Dylan Mulvaney. And so this is a fascinating situation. So here's what's going on. Anheuser-Busch is still up 7-8% year to date. Bud Light is rebounding from this backlash that they got from this campaign featuring a transgender star. Bud Light sales are down 26% recently since this boycott started. Third and fourth, the opinions on all this stuff are sort of all over the board. I'll give a couple of mine. First, we assume at some point this sort of moment will die down and Bud Light will recover. You know, again, Bud Light, it is what it is, probably misread their audience, probably its own error, then tried to respond to it by firing a couple ad execs and so forth. But at the end of the day, memories are generally fairly short, and I assume that this will die down at some point. Third and fourth things, just different types of thoughts and these kinds of things. And you're free to agree with me, not agree with me, all those things. I don't care, but love to hear your opinions. Always feel free to text me at 773-766-5322, and I'll give you a couple opinions very quickly. First, the overreaction of the boycott. People at some point ought to let this go against Bud Light. It is what it is. They erred in reading their audience. So be it. Second, transgender athletes. At the end of the day, I'm old enough to remember the Renee Richards. Renee Richards was Dr. Richard Raskin, who then started competing on the women's tennis tour as Renee Richards, and she cleaned up very quickly. And then at some point, she wasn't allowed to compete in tennis. And I don't really believe it's fair that a biological male competes in women's sports. You call me old-fashioned, whatever you want. I just don't think it's really fair. I don't know how you look at that. I don't agree or disagree with people, but that's my perspective on it. The next thing is consent on people changing their sex. I do think parental consent up to a certain age is probably appropriate. People should be free to ultimately choose their genders, but they probably got to be old enough before they make totally life-altering decisions. And I do believe that's the case. But at the end of the day, God bless Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, misread their audience, all good. Let's move on. Anheuser-Busch is recovering fine. Bud Light, I think, has seen the worst of this boycott. I don't think anybody's going back to drink Miller Lite because of this issue, or they'll get over it quickly if they prefer Bud Light to Miller Lite. I certainly do. I might drink Bud Light now just in support of Anheuser-Busch in contrast to this sort of overreaction and crazy boycott that's going on. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. I know this may have leaked a little bit into political commentary and social commentary. So I'm not really with the Bud Light boycott. I'm not really with transgender athletes competing in women's sports. And I do believe there should be some consent on before you change your sex, at least as up to maybe when you're a minor. But that's all I got today. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. Thank you very much.